first, let me say thank you very much for this wonderful honour. And thank you for the opportunity to come here today to be with you. And this is my first time to Moldova. I've been to 60 countries. This is my first time here. And so far you've been a very, very hospitable, very friendly group. And that's true. So I will take this wonderful honour back to Australia and tell everybody about the great honour you have bestowed on me. I'm very, very grateful for this time. Thank you. I think somebody asked me a question earlier. We just did a television program down here which went out live, and one of the questions they asked was, what do I do that's different to what happens anywhere else in the area of human communication? And I think the answer to that, if you read our books, you'll notice that they're written with three basic factors in them. One, they have real life stories, things that really happen to real people. And all the things that we write about in our books are real things, they're real people. Many of my family members, so I have to change the names so they don't identify themselves. And the second thing is we use science to try to work out what could be the real or possible reasons why we might behave the way we do or say or do the things we do. And third, and this is a very important factor, is to make it funny, to make science entertaining. And that formula seemed to have worked very well everywhere, with everybody, because, as you know, if you're having good fun and laughing while you're learning, you want to go to learn more, you retain more, we know that, and it makes it much more interesting, isn't that true? So for 10 years, when I lived in England, for example, I had a contract with BBC Science, and every week they wanted to come up with a segment that reflected new BBC science. They didn't want to do the boring stuff they had done in the past, which was fairly dry. So they wanted to every week to have a segment that had 3 points, 3 things that people could learn from, that had some type of verifiable or provable base, and importantly that was entertaining, because television now has become about ratings. You make people laugh, you get good ratings. So how could we have intelligent ratings is what it was. And as a result of this, we were coming up with some of the weirdest things you could ever think of. And this is one of the ones they asked me on the TV show before. One of these weird things that we talk about, and the things that I talk about and study are things that you know about already. You already understand this, but you may not know that you understand it, but on a deep level you know it, because you're probably wired to respond in these ways. And this was the subject of what happens in a public building like this if you go to the toilet. Now, the toilet's out here. Chances are, if you use those toilets, that you'll be there with strangers, people you don't know. Is that true? Yeah, you'll be out there with people you don't know. Now, for many men, this can be quite a nervous experience. Not so much for women. So the first thing that we did, with our database of over 500,000 men and women in 33 countries, we asked them, in a public place like this, when a man or woman goes to the restroom outside, what do you think happens in there? And you know what the women think, gentlemen? The women in this room think that if you go to the restroom here, where you see other men who you don't know, these women think that you will begin a conversation with these men and begin to talk to them about a wide range of subjects. Now, you know why women think this universally? Because that's what women do. Women go to the toilet with strangers, they leave as lifelong friends. Now for men, ladies, it's not that way at all. Men have a special saying about public toilets. death before eye contact. That's our saying. We talk to no one. And we go alone. We do not need a support group. Men go to the toilet alone. Now we know everybody knows this. You've seen it happen, right? Women go in groups. And they talk and they bond. Now, my background as a kid, I was fortunate that my father was a life insurance salesman in the 1950s. And I come from a very poor family with lots of brothers and sisters, not a very big house. So when you were raised in that environment, you have people who are all over you all the time because there's not much space. And my father taught me very early that when you knock on a door, which is what he did to collect premiums, but when that door was opened, you could tell by a person's behaviour whether they would be accepting or rejecting, whether they're happy to see you or likely to want to say no to what you're proposing. And then you could do certain things that would influence their behaviour. Now this is back in the 1950s when the word body language hadn't even been created at that point. For example, if you would knock on the door, and now remember I'm 5 years of age, I used to think he took me with him because he loved me, but that wasn't the case. He took me because it was easier to get inside if you had a kid with you. So he would knock on the door, and it was in Melbourne in Australia, it's always wet and raining. So when someone would open the door, he would announce who he was and where he was from, and then he would make this sweeping movement with his feet, like this. And around half the people would instinctively sit back and invite him in. So the gesture created a reaction which gave a positive response. So I learned these things very early. And because my dad was a salesman, I thought everybody was a salesman, so it made sense to me as a kid. He said, if you want pocket money, you knock on doors and you sell things. That's what you do. And I did that right through my teenagehood. Even though my basic passion was in psychology. I loved it. I thought understanding people was just the most wonderful thing. So I took that and used that to look at practical applications in business and in a real life situation. And then to make them funny. And that's the key. One of the keys to learning that Patch Adams, have you heard of Patch Adams? He's the doctor who created laughter therapy. He took people with serious illnesses and his therapy was to treat them by making them laugh like crazy for long periods of time, creating endorphin production in the body, which boosted the immune system. And he had tremendous results with people living longer, being hospitalised for less times, and being easier to deal with. And the great thing about laughter, if you can work out how to make what you do entertaining for other people and applicable, then you will always be in demand. And that's an important thing. You'll always be in demand. Now, some of the interesting things that we uncovered, they demonstrate what you already know to be true. For example, one of the early experiments that we did, thank you, back in the early 1980s. Now remember, back in the early 1980s, computers really weren't in homes, and it was fax machines had just been invented. That we were doing research things by getting groups of people to go and add up statistics manually. That's how it was done in the 70s and the 80s. Today, of course, it's all internet, which is much simpler. And one of the things that I discovered early, which I kind of knew, was that when people are instructed not to tell the truth and to try to lie and be convincing, one of the most common things that began to happen was people would begin to increase hand-to-face movement. And this seemed to be a fairly universal thing, except for Chinese, who tend not to touch their face when they lie. They move their feet. So if you want to see if Mr. Chew is telling the truth, you should look at his shoes, not his face. Because he will look you in the face and lie, and not a problem at all. Whereas most cultures have difficulty looking in the eye and lying. They have a tendency to look away, or if they are intentional rehearsed liars, they maintain eye contact. They look you right in the eye and lie. And all women here have seen that from a man somewhere in your life. Darling, I love you. It's true. Now the thing is that deep inside your biology, you understand what these things mean without even having to read them. So largely a lot of the work that I've done in the last 40 years is bring things that you know to a conscious level, so you know what it is you're doing. And a simple example of body language was, body language is not something that I or anybody else discovered. It's the original human language. It's been there for millions of years, and it's the same language that most animal species use for communication. And they all seem to know what the deal is with each other. But with us, in recent times, we invented this exaggerated breathing called speaking. Our focus now, particularly in many educational institutions, has been focused on the language and ignoring what the body's saying. And the body's still speaking just as loudly as it ever did. And what body language is, in simple terms, is an outward reflection of your emotional condition. What it means is whatever you're likely to be feeling as an emotion could be reflected in a gesture, an expression, or a movement. So the real art of reading body signals, or body language, is to read the person's emotional condition, that is how they're feeling. You then match it up with what you hear them saying in the circumstances under which it's all happening, in the context in which it's happening, and that allows you to piece together what could be going on in their mind at that point, which is what they did fairly capably on the show Lie to Me. Now, Lie to Me was, the guy behind that was Paul Ekman, who's a face specialist, who's very, very good at what he does, and that show technically and scientifically is very accurate in terms of the gestures that they show and their possible meanings. The rest of the show is all Hollywood. They just make that up. That's not the way it works. Like, who's seen the Lie to Me show? Well, on Lie to Me, they've got the guy who walks out of the building and he says, "You're lying, you're hiding something, you're not telling the truth." It doesn't work like that. If it did work like that, it wouldn't be a man doing that, it would be a woman, right? We know that women, when it comes to deception and catching liars, women are 2 to 3 times more efficient at doing that than men. Which is why we encourage men not to lie to women to their face. You're better to call them on the phone. It's much safer. Face to face, it doesn't work so well. And it was always a question in many people's mind, well, why would women be more acutely perceptive, particularly when it comes to deceit and catching lies? In fact, in reading people's emotions generally, when you think about it, it makes sense. As childbearers, and that hasn't become equal yet anywhere in the world, unfortunately, as a childbearer, giving birth to children, we give birth to useless babies. The babies can't do anything. They can't talk, they can't run with the pack, they're useless for the first 7 years. First 2 years they can't talk. Then for 7 years, they really can't be self-sufficient, where chimpanzee who's abandoned in the forest after 6 weeks has a good chance of survival. But humans, we're not very good. So it would appear that human pair bonding is likely to have happened as a way of keeping him around for at least 7 years to give that offspring a chance of survival. But whether that's actually true or not, it's hard to know. But when you look at it on the outside,